morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first VIFF talk of 2022. My name is Kinga Pinkowska, and I'm the creative engagement producer here at the Vancouver International Film Festival. I would like to start by giving thanks to the Musqueam, Squamish, and South Nations for their continued stewardship of the unceded and occupied land on which we live and work. From creators and showrunners to directors, writers, producers, and craftspeople, the VIFFTalks series drew from a finely created group of key creatives. Whether they're responsible for critically acclaimed films or groundbreaking TV series, our guests provide a treasure trove of information and inspiration for fellow creators, filmmakers, industry professionals, and of course, the fans. We are thrilled today to shine a spotlight on Academy Award-nominated cinematographer Dariusz Wolski. From visionary director-producer Ridley Scott comes the true-life dynastic saga House of Gucci. To fashion this star-studded, visually stylish film, Scott called his trusted, long-term, behind-the-camera collaborators, headed by veteran Dariusz Wolski, whose credits include The Martian, Sweeney Todd, Alice in Wonderland, The Duel, and News of the World. The acclaimed cinematographer has an eye-popping resume and has worked in a wide-ranging variety of styles during his career. We are honored to host Dariusz to discuss his process in determining visual style of House of Gucci. Today's talk is presented by Panavision, and our host is Emmy-winning cinematographer Greg Middleton. Welcome, Dariusz and Greg.
It was a name that sounded so sweet, so seductive. Synonymous with worth, style, power. But their name was a curse too.
I've been a Gucci all my life.
Your name is in the history books.
Paolo, you are Gucci, you need to dress the part.
It's chic.
Gucci needs new blood. It's time to take out the trash.
They're my family.
So am I.
You picked a real firecracker.
She's a handful.
Bravo. I don't consider myself to be a particularly ethical person, but I am fair.
Can you keep a secret?
Father, Son, and House of Gucci.
Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Middleton. I'm a cinematographer in Vancouver, and welcome to the VIFF Creator Talk to speak to the amazing Darius Wolski, who's cinematographer on House of Gucci, which you just watched. Hello, Darius. Thank you very much for joining us today and spending some time with us.
Thank you. Pleasure's mine.
Oh, great. Yeah, you have a lot of fans. I think we have quite a few people lined up. Just a reminder for people that are listening or watching online, you can, if it's watching live, you can ask questions. We'll have a short Q&A period at the end. If we don't cover topics you're interested in. I just want to start with a couple things. First is, well, one, congratulations on the film. It's really fantastic, and you made it during the pandemic, which was hard, and a lot of location shooting. And it was, I don't know, it's your 7th or 8th movie with Ridley Scott, and I wanted to ask a bit about, you know, your collaborative process with him, and what's that like?
Well, it's great. Yeah. I don't know if it's 7 or 8. I think it's 8. I'm not sure. I stopped the count. I'm just honored that I still keep getting calls. And I've known the family for quite a while. I did 2 movies for his brother a long time ago. I was honored. One day he called me and I always wanted to work with him. And he was like a biggest inspiration to my generation of cinematographers, because when we were just wannabe cameramen, so just did the first early things, the Blade Runner came out, Alien, and they were just such a strong, powerful visual inspirations for pretty much everybody. So it's kind of quite amazing to be able to, work with a guy, and just work with things that you kind of grew up on. That's the best film school I ever had, was probably watching his movies.
Yeah, his work was an inspiration to so many, including myself. And one interesting thing watching his films, I think seeing 2 of them in a row, was his consistency with the sort of style of filmmaking. Like his approach seems very consistent in certain ways. His methods are obviously, he's been refining over the years, and he does quite a bit of storyboarding, I understand, right, from your work with him?
That's
like draws his own thing sometimes?
That's his way of thinking, yeah. That's his way of thinking. He does storyboards in various stages. He does storyboards just when he gets the script in the very early days, because he gets some drawings from him. Sometimes it's quite funny because you're doing one movie and you start getting storyboards. It's like, oh, wait a minute, it's just not what we're doing. Oh no, this is the next one. I mean, you haven't even gotten the script, and that's the next one. Okay.
Wow.
So I mean, that's his way of thinking. So he does that in a very early stage, and then of course, while you start looking at locations, he refines the whole thing. And then even while we're shooting, he still does it, because it's just there's a new sequence, new scene, and there's all the logistics and the technical stuff involved and the effects and stuff. So then all of a sudden he just makes his new drawings.
And how early would you get how?
You have to keep up with those storyboards all the time, because and it doesn't have to be exactly where we're shooting, but it's basically getting into his way of thinking. It's kind of like a code, that he just learned how he thinks, what he's gonna, and at the same time, from all those like 6, 7 storyboards, you anticipating what might happen between this, because it's going to be 30 more shots than he drew in the end.
Yeah, as the process will evolve. Do you know how early, like when you got the script for House of Gucci, how early did you get your first storyboards from him, or how early did you guys talk? Do you guys read separately and then discuss the script, or how does that sort of work at the beginning?
Well, hang on. With Gucci was a little bit, he had this project going for a while. When you work with him, you always hear about all the stuff he's thinking about. So it was basically, the whole story was developed by his wife, Janina, and originally Ridley just wanted to produce the film and give it to other directors and stuff. And I think because of our hiatus during the last duel, because we shut down in March and we had like 4 or 5 months, that he got whatever we did, and he was just going crazy, because everyone was. So he calls me up, hey, listen, we're just going to do Gucci. I just talked to Lady Gaga, and we're just going to be in it. Well, all right.
Great.
And so he went full force to develop, to nail the script down and to get all the actors. So while we were doing Last Duel, when we came back to do Last Duel, that movie was already being
yeah, he'd already bursted in his head in between the 2 films.
Production designer went straight from Dublin to Rome to start prepping it, and costume Gianti. These are like people who start ahead of me, and obviously, you go from 14th century armor to high fashion world.
To rebuilding Gucci period costumes.
80s and suits and dresses and all this stuff. So they just need a lot of time to figure that stuff out, and research and find sources and so forth and so forth. So the great thing for me is when I come in, like the aesthetic work is kind of done, because they really put so much effort to the whole thing, and it's like his team, Gianti and Arthur Max. So I come in, I already have like kind of a movie design. I walk into costume department, I see costumes. I walk to art department, I see renderings, drawings, then I see his storyboards, so the whole image, the movie is slowly just being created. So that gives me great time to think about, how I'm going to approach it, what I'm going to do with that. And it was interesting because coming straight from a period movie that it's fully, natural light, windows or candles or fireplace, that's it. So then you come to the world of fashion, and there's a lot of strobe lights and fashion photography. And so it was kind of like, it was a great challenge. It was just like, okay, let's just do it totally different. It's all about fashion icons. And we also really throw some photographic ideas and painting ideas. Of course, when you do a period movie, you refer to paintings. When you do the fashion movie, you refer more into fashion photography. So our kind of photographer that we both admire was William Klein, who is fashion photography spanned from 50s to all the way to 80s and 90s. And what was really beautiful about his work is that around 80s and 90s, because he went through all the glam, beautiful photography and different styles from different periods. And in the end, he was just taking a black and white photographs. They were backstage of fashion shows, which they were just not glamorous. They were just half-dressed girls, with hairs half done and all makeup people and hair people pinning them and dressing them. And the light was always rough. Everything was grainy, black and white and stuff. We wanted to make, there's quite a little bit of black and white in it. We wanted to go more, but actually I think we really backed off a little bit.
Yeah, it's a real peek behind the curtain. It's the unglamorous, but also very simple in some ways.
It's about an underbelly of the fashion. It wasn't about the glam of it. It was about all the underlinings of the fashion world. So that was our approach. So it's shot again very naturalistic, because that's what we do. Even though Ridley is always accused of over stylizing, but it's just basically our taste. But it's still very naturalistic and very I would say documentary.
Yeah.
Hopefully critics will ever get it, but they don't, because it's stylized. If something looks bad, then that's documentary. If something looks good, it's stylized. But that's their aesthetic. That's their way of seeing it.
Well, it definitely felt very naturalistic to me, but also with the amazing design, it was the lighting is also very naturalistic, and also with digital cameras now, naturalism is done so much more simply in some ways, because they see everything so much more. You can light to your eye in a different way than with film.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we don't have to. I want to ask you, I want to play a clip maybe now if we can, because there's one thing I was talking about, the style he sort of shoots in. We have a clip that's called Fakes, I think, Ryan queued up, which is a little brief scene where he's discussing the fake Gucci bags and things that are made, him and Lady Gaga briefly. Can we play that clip, Ryan? Yeah, it's a simple scene, but one thing I wanted to ask you about, which I know has come up before in talks with Ridley, he does like to use multiple cameras and shoot coverage sometimes at the same time. Was this scene done that way? And that also affects the naturalistic shoot, right?
Yeah, this one is super simple. There's just two medium shots, one wide shot to show the apartment, and start with So I'm sure, it could have been shot at the same time. Yeah,
and it's because he does like to do you use sometimes up to 3 or 4 cameras when you're doing a bigger scene, four. Okay.
3, 4. Yeah, this probably was one setup. Yeah.
Yeah, because he likes to stage. He sort of builds his staging first, and then you can watch it and then to sort of figure out how he'd break it down afterwards. Is that partly how it works in a scene like this?
Designs it's pre-edited. Yeah.
Okay.
It's almost like it's too scientific. It's it's a wide shot, right? Or maybe the wide shot was separate. I'm not sure, but I'm sure there was more shots to it. They were probably tighter and it was probably mediums and tights. But he just didn't want to go that. He does it, but then him and Claire decide. Claire's an editor. They just decide how they want to play the scene. Are they going to go too close, or they just want to back it off? I mean, that was just enough. The scene is so quick and simple, and because you have a repetition of the same scene with Al Pacino later, when they confront
Yeah.
Ali.
And it's all,
So
and-
you know, it was actually an apartment in Milan, in New York, no, in Rome, and we had a bit of a blue screen outside just to make it look like New York. Yeah, there was a bit of. Fortunately, it was modern apartment, and there was a beautiful big terrace, so we could just actually build a blue screen just off there, which is great.
Oh yeah, and you could build in some light to come in above it to be natural, so you had space to do that as well, and then it could fill the whole room a little bit.
Probably
the window.
Yeah.
And I remember because you worked with Ridley's brother Tony on Crimson Tide, which is also an amazing film, and that was a lot of multiple cameras, I think, in a submarine, which could be quite tricky, I think, right? Like, was that near the beginning of when you had to begin to work with a lot of cameras?
Sink or swim, yeah.
Yeah.
There was, after the movie, I said, one day I'm going to make a movie with one camera, I'm going to operate myself. And it never happened.
You get too good. You're too good at it. That's the problem.
I really have so much respect for like Bob Richardson and Roger Deakins, because they've managed to do their careers with just sitting on the camera themselves. And it's beautiful because you really kind of, if you're operating and lighting in the same time, I mean, of course, it's like Would Never Fly with Ridley, but with other directors, you basically, your understanding of the light, it's just, you design, and you can pan a little bit right, because, you know, you're going to put the light here, you know, you design your shot based on your lighting. And that's why the movies look so pretty and beautiful. And it's, I totally respect this. I mean, don't take me wrong. I mean, but it's just more challenging to do it like that with Ridley, because he always throws the curveballs at you. But at the same time, he's a strong, very strong visual person, so he's not going to let you make a bad picture, because if it sucks, it's like, this is not going to happen. Oh,
yeah, he's not going to ask you to put the camera on the wrong side of the room.
Well, he will, because he see what he do with it. And if you manage to, of course he will. But if you manage to do it, then he says, "Oh, it works, man." And so you always have to be on your toes. You have to be on the top. Yeah. You have to always come up with, you know, it's just like, it's more complicated to make it work. And it's more challenging. Yeah.
It's certainly not boring then, for sure. You're like, I mean, you obviously enjoy the challenge, and he obviously knows you enjoy the challenge.
Well, there's always about, even if you stage the scene with him quite often, you know, you have actors. I am in the corner, he's talking to them, and then he stands up, he starts looking at from certain angle, and I look always from the other angle, which is basic. And then you look at me, I look at him, and so okay, an actor's leave. I said, it's better to play from this side. Yeah, but I want to see it from this side because it's important. But the light is better from that side. Yeah, I know. Let's just shoot both ways, you know. And because you have multiple cameras, you can try that. You know what I mean? You can try. And then all of a sudden you find yourself that what would seem to be like by the book a flat shot actually does work.
Yeah.
As long as you know, as long as you do something with it, you know, because there's not. And this film was actually the most front-lit movie I've ever done in my life, you know. But it was done on purpose because it's fashion film. Yeah.
Yeah, and the environment sort of support it as well. It didn't need to be all silhouette. There's silhouettes in the film, but you want to see a lot of the things and see the characters a certain way, and it works.
Yeah, it's just a balance when you go silhouette and when you don't. You know, when you just want to. You know, there's a lot of strobe photography, a lot of like the fashion shows, which were kind of fashion shows were exact rip-offs of the real fashion shows. Gianni Versace was exactly ripped off. We watched it very carefully, and the first Tom Ford show was double spotlights. You know, it was taken exactly from. Maybe our spotlights were a bit more modern than what Gianni Versace. But hey, who would know?
Well, I guess if you're working with him in this way too, then doing a lot of location work, you'd be obviously you'd be probably pressed to work with some existing light, especially if it's really great for a moment, and try and get a scene in a brief amount of time when the light is really great. With him, I'm assuming he would just want to gamble and say, hey, this looks great right now. Let's just try and do it, you know, with 4 cameras and get it in the short window of time we have. I'm sure that comes up quite a bit then.
That's, I mean, not always, but compared to other directors, yes. Not always. You gotta have a backup plan here and there because there's always something that's gonna happen. But most of the time, yeah, you can really, you know, he likes to take chances, and it's great. And it's not like, you know, sometimes when you, as a cinematographer, when you work for like a big studio and some other directors, and it's like you just are scared to be blamed, you know, so something goes wrong. And then, you know, I'm sure it's like when you're young, when you're starting out, quite often it's like, what do you mean you can't have, you know? So then, because of that, you start ordering more equipment and more stuff and putting tents and covering the sun and putting the light. So everything is huge, you know, and you're shooting a very boring fucking stuff, you know?
Yeah, it's like to
have
the
like, oh my God, cranes, cherry pickers, silks, and this and that. And then you see, okay, look, people just, okay, they look nice. Yeah, fine.
Yeah, but it doesn't maybe have the...
Oh, because you're going to see. Yeah. Like I've seen this so many times, and everyone is outside with the huge silks. Everybody's just dying, praying the wind's not going to pick up and rip everything to pieces. And then you look at the shot, it's like, oh, okay. It matches, but it's boring into boring, you know.
Yeah. Or sometimes maybe it's one shot you have to recreate from the scene you did very quickly, and you got to recreate that one for one shot to help the scene pick. Yeah.
You
and
know,
it's like
that's our skill. That's what we hired for, you know. We have to we do it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But that's just a general approach. You know, it's just people just basically covering themselves because they don't want to be blamed for it.
Yeah, and I think that's also, as you mentioned, starting out, that's also the big fear. Like you know, when you're younger, that is a big fear of trying to, you know, to be, you don't want to be exposed to making that kind of error or that kind of stuff. But it's also being nimble and quick is a thing which can really save you and lead to the most interesting result.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your crew and how you prep with your crew. Like now that we're shooting digitally, we have a DIT and we do color timing digitally. And how is that process and prep when you sort of are developing the look once you've seen the art direction stuff and costume thing? What's the process like with them once you sort of prepare to shoot?
Well, I'm super fortunate because I was thrown into this digital world, probably like everybody else, but maybe sooner than other people who are like still shooting film. And obviously you just don't know the medium, you hate it, everything, you know, like all those Genesis cameras, all those early digital cameras, which is not great. They're simply not great. But, you know, since, you know, like Red and then Alexa, you know, it's pretty amazing. So because I did not have electronic knowledge, I still can barely, just, you're lucky that we're on Zoom right now. But, no, I'm using my DIT is a person that travels with me all the time. That's the one person that wherever I go, he comes with me, and he's my technical brain, basically. If there's new technology, if there's anything, you know. So what we do, we basically, we shoot some tests here and there. You know, there's always some idea about the look and stuff, and then he color grades on the set. Color grade, but it's not like he spends hours and hours. We just set up the look. You know, okay, that's the look. That's the look. We show some stuff to Ridley. He likes it. He doesn't, you know. And we create the DCP files, and that all goes to Abbott. So the movie basically looks roughly like you want it to look. And then the whole thing goes to Stefan Nakamura and Company 3, and he just basically takes it all in, spends some time with it himself, and translate it on the better, you know, nuance it up, put windows and stuff, because that's what we cannot do. And then when we come in, we'll just, you know, we'll just add up the skies, we just lift up some stuff and make some stuff. So it's actually pretty, you know, it's pretty cozy and comfortable because Ridley sees what we do on the set.
Yeah.
Then he trusts Stefan as much as I do, and then he goes, looks at the stuff with Steph. I look at the stuff with Steph. I do a bit of correction. He does a bit of correction. So it's pretty.
It's a system that works now. It's like
Actually, I have to admit, I had very little to do on Gucci because I was still doing a lot of stuff I was doing a lot of stuff on Last Duel because movies were opening back to back. And what happened? Oh, I know exactly what happened. We almost got Gucci, and Stefan had to come to London to finish the grade. I said, "Oh, great, you'll be in London, fantastic! So we'll just do the last touches with Ridley together, so it'll be great." And sure enough, during the early prep on the movie that I'm doing now, Kid Back, I'm in London and I'm exposed to somebody who has COVID. So sure enough, I'm in the hotel for 2 weeks on the Zoom prepping the movie. So I can't go to Company 3. Oh God, that was a nightmare. So Stefan is all the way from LA to London. Ridley's here. We're all supposed to get together. So I was like, okay, Steph, watch for this. Make sure that okay, I got you. Okay.
Did they set you up with a proper monitor to maybe do a remote session so you could watch it at home?
No. No, because it's remote. I mean, I've seen the film. It's just a few.
Yeah, you weren't starting at the beginning, so you could at least you had full confidence then.
I've seen. There was just a very final touch. That I had to kind of let it go and see it in the movie theater. It was right.
Well, one more gift from COVID, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So when you're it's interesting that you said about now when you're doing the way you're doing it now, which is something I think it's very smart because then Ridley can see on set pretty much what the film's going to look like. If it's on a mystery later on, like it's going to look different, you can grade with your DIT to get close to what you want.
Yeah.
And then do you guys use monitor and HDR, which is a whole other new technical thing we have to deal with now?
We didn't go there yet. No, I'm horrified. No.
Excellent, because it's a bit horrifying, I can assure you. It's challenging.
Oh yeah, I know all about that. I know all about HDR transfers. No, it's very complicated, and that's where you really need a good telecine person, because you have to translate. You have to know how to translate this whole thing.
Yeah,
I remember the irony about the early HDR was Stefan's story. Was it with our film or somebody else's movie? I think it was with Martian. That there was new HDR, so you have all these HDR people who actually were giving money for studios to do HDR versions. So what happens is, Stefan spends all this time to make Martian look exactly like the original thing. So they come in as like there's something. Well, how come it doesn't look different?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I know.
And here it starts. It's like,
yeah.
He spent all this time to make sure that doesn't look fake. And I mean, the whole thing it got sorted out now because everybody knows how to subdue it. Everybody kind of knows how to set up the monitors, but it's in our profession. But if you buy a monitor, a flat screen from the box and you plug it in.
Yeah.
Might as well.
It's scary. It's scary because it's like the whites are 10,000 nits and it doesn't look anything like what you wanted.
There's film settings and you have to bring everything back in, all the brightness, all those fancy things that. But even Stefan Nakamura, he goes to Korea and he talks to all these people, all the manufacturers, and explains it to them, and they just don't want to listen because their concept is football games, and big flashy TV shows, So
yeah.
That's what we are.
It's like us fighting when when people buy their regular TVs at home, they come out of the factory settings all set to a high refresh rate, and it's like a total, unless someone knows how to do that when they get it home, your work will be totally misrepresented, which is it's a bit of a maddening proposition.
No, but I think eventually people will get more sophisticated. Look at all VHS days. Come on, look at the TVs. We have to always look back. We're not getting fired anymore. We used to get fired. We didn't get fired for the movie theater. We used to get fired for fear of what the movie is going to look on VHS. And way back to historically explain to you, when I became a member of Academy, they had this, old buildings. Now there's a new one. I haven't seen it yet. They had this museum of all different things, costume. And there were letters. And there was a letter from one producer to another about Conrad Hall Jr., Conrad Hall. And one was saying, Conrad, I know he's very accomplished and wonderful cameraman, but what's going to happen when the movie is shown on the drive-in? So before the first there was drive-ins, then there was VHS.
Yeah.
So we kind of, and everything is way too bright and too sharp, but you can really take it down if you know.
Yeah, it's definitely where the standards are getting a bit better. I did see House of Gucci in the theater here, and I'm sad to report that the screen was a bit too dark. But anyway, at least it was a big
this
screen.
Movie is too dark. That's fine.
Yeah, it's all right, but it's missed a little bit. It was. It didn't disappear. It just I wanted to see I want to see the contrast that you see.
It's a pretty bad movie. Yeah.
That's great. I want to play the clip just because I want to maybe talk a bit of specifics about lighting, because I know we have some people that are watching that are probably cinematographers or curious about specific tools and stuff. I didn't pick these clips, by the way, but we have a second clip which is a Paolo discussing with with Lady Gaga about his line or something. She's sort of seducing him into he should have his line, and that kind of, is that not, or should we not play that scene?
The movie, once you make a film, is not yours anymore, so it's like whatever.
Okay, well let's play the clip and we can talk about it for a second. So there's an interesting high contrast situation with a bright window and a deep room and her walking to the back and wanting to probably shoot a lot at the same time. Can you talk a bit about like how you would approach that, just for the young cinematographers that would be mystified by that, about how to make that work?
Horrified, yeah. No, it was a tricky one because they were fully improvising, so you just kind of, but you just go for it. I mean, it's frontlit for her, which is great, and he's silhouetted fine. He's very loud out there, so you don't have to see him.
Yeah, and did he? But
he's still got a profile. You see them all, so that's great.
Did you use a bit of fill from inside the room for his side, or
I had
to. Is it up in the ceiling, or how did you arrange that?
Yeah, it was up in the ceiling.
And he's wearing quite a lot of prosthetics too. Did you have any when you were testing or you started the film? Did you do any tests for the makeup with him?
No.
It looks pretty natural to the eye.
No. Actually, there were Scandinavian artists. They were pretty remarkable. Yeah. It was a complete secret. He was trying to be very mysterious about the whole thing, and so we were not allowed to shoot tests because nobody was supposed to see that. Anyway,
right.
But good prosthetics, yeah. And you just have to be careful with prosthetics. You have to be always careful. Very little light, very kind of little directional light. If you flare a little bit, always better. Just don't light it properly. That's where you're going to see all the prosthetics.
You want to see the edges and the lines.
No, but other than prosthetics were amazing.
Amazing. Did you use any? And you shot with the LF, right? The Alexa LF which is probably your favorite camera now. Would that be right? Or
it's just like, can I just stick with one camera for 3 movies?
Yeah.
It reminds me back in the day, like anytime you made a new movie, there was a different high-speed film stock from Kodak.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the last one was 5219, and there was 18. There was story of 15, 16. so every year was like a new test, you know. And there
Yeah.
was a whole thing about just being grainy, so you have to overexpose it, and then your printing lights were getting higher, and then all of a sudden they made a softer film, so now your printing lights were. It was always constant battle with them too, with Kodak.
Yeah, I think we forget that sometimes in digital. It used to be simple, but no, there was always new films. It's always been a game of adapting.
There was always a print on Monday, you know, and then there's some, because, you know, the good timers on Sunday, they have a day off, they play golf. So there's some apprentice, and Monday rush is always green or yellow.
Yes, the temperature changes in the bath, and then it's different from one reel to the next, and all that. Did you use any lens filtration on this project at all?
No, I never do. But I use lenses I use lights in the frame. You know, it's not like flare for sake of flare, because that's kind of a little bit ostentatious. But you know, it's just like if you have something very overexposed, it softens the lens. You know?
Yeah, so you can add some softness by leaving some hotter things to bleed over and create softness that way.
And I really go very simple. I use those short ingenue zooms. You know.
Oh yeah. Oh, you mean the compact ones, like the 15 to 40 and the
And I, you know, anytime I just like test out lenses and stuff, and most of them are too short, you know, and other ones are too gimmicky, you know. So it's like you look at the overexposed window, they look great, and you look at the overexposed fireplace, they look great. You know, it's just like, I don't know what's wrong with them. I mean, but there's so many companies that manufacture lenses, and it's funny, they approach me left and right, but it's like, I don't have time in life to keep testing lenses. And you know, people love it. People just love spending time. You know, when I don't work, I read books, I do other things. You know, you know what I mean?
Did you use?
You know.
I think I was just looking at the equipment list from the show. You used the Panaspeeds, which are the large format lenses, and the Spheros, I think.
I like them. I don't use them very often, but I use them when I'm missing, when I need exposure. And they're basically all 70 super speeds.
Right.
Except they are formatted, they cover the big chip, And you know, the basic Gordon Willis lenses. I'm like, what's wrong with that? He's done it. He's done it, right?
Yeah.
What else am I supposed to test?
Yeah. Why do we need to get better than that? It's a good question.
You know, and it's beautiful. What's beautiful about them, that they're not perfect, but they're not like ostentatiously flary. You know, some of them are more flary, some of them are less, some of them are too flary. I have to just back them off and change the lens, because but you know, there's always a surprise, you know. That's great, you know.
Yeah, a little bit of imperfection is nice, especially for you know, something in the period as well. And you use there is a lot of, everyone smokes in the film, of course, because it's a lot of the 70s and 80s, and you used quite a bit of atmosphere in a lot of scenes as well, which is also its own challenge.
Just a little bit, yeah. We use way less smoke than we used to, but
because that used to be the one trick to sometimes in the film days control contrast a lot, right? It was an easier way to do it than have to add a lot of light. And now with digital cameras, it's kind of to be too much, right? It can be too much.
Well, it was too much for film too. The reason, you know, okay, Red and all those guys in early days were using smoke. That, remember that later on it was 100 ASA film.
Yeah, yeah.
So simple as that. You smoke it up. You just got extra stuff.
Exactly. Instead, and also
you can see it with a digital iris knob. You smoke it up, you close it down. I mean, simple as that. Now we know everything because we can see it.
Yeah. Before you had to guess, and you were shooting anamorphic, so you're shooting a big stop anyway. So.
And 52-47 was a contrasty film stock. So you know you wanted to, you know, and what was phenomenal about this movie is that you put smoke, you put backlight, and that's how you lift your exposure up.
Yeah, like in the days of flashing, it's gone away now. Now that's all taken care of by our DOT if we want to do that idea.
Yeah, was even before. Yeah, flashing was gone. It was Wilmers and Wilmer Zsigmond and what was his famous Robert Altman's Western.
That would be McCabe and Mr. Miller.
McCabe and Mr. Miller.
Yeah,
right.
which I just watched actually just over the Christmas break. It's just an amazing looking film.
Bit of backlight, bit of flashing. That's it.
Yeah, and a lot of grain in that film too. Like when you watch it now, it's quite amazing sometimes with all the stuff which we don't have.
The irony is like we were just dying not to have grain, right? There was like a cinematographer pride to shoot something with no grain. Now people put grain in digital to make.
I know. Have you ever done that before on anything digital? Have you tried experimenting with that?
I think I suggested it once or twice with Ridley for Ridley. I looked some tests. It's pretty, but it becomes so ostentatious. It's artificial.
Yeah, it can. And I find it can make it jump out, look like a mistake if it's not consistent. Then it just makes the audience or removes them maybe sometimes.
Yeah, there's some flashbacks and something. I don't know.
So can I ask you also about the crew that you're working with now? You have your DIT is a person that comes with you all the time. When you have 4 cameras, do you know all the operators usually, or do you have 1 or 2 that always come with you?
Well, there's always a bit of a guess, yeah. But what it is there's always 1 or 2 strong operators that I use with Ridley most of the time. I use Daniele Massachesi, who's Italian. He won't be with me anymore because he just shot Matrix. But no, he's still gonna do Kickback with me, but he's moving on. But then on Last Duel, I use James Goldwyn from the States. So it's like you need 1 or 2 strong operators that understand his way of thinking, And then, actually there's more. There's Daniele, I'm gonna use Sean Conway. It's tricky. In England, it's good because there's enough crew people. Fingers crossed because also it's very busy. In Rome, yeah. And then you find somebody young who is really anxious and you kind of coach them and they're great.
Yeah.
So it's
There is a lot of coaching in our job anyway, right? There is a lot of coaching in our job anyways in some ways.
It's also becomes part of the puzzle, So it's because with Ridley, because of multiple cameras, it's not the one camera has to have a perfect shot. You're just creating this ensemble, and they keep up. They all Ridley yells at them, not me. So.
Do you ever? I
just run in and kind of coach them quietly.
Oh yeah. So he gets the headphones, and you go personally.
It's I communicate with Ridley directly.
Yeah.
But when we roll, because he cuts when he shoots, so he has 4 monitors, and he calls the names of the operators that are cuts. Okay, go to Daniel.
You got this. Do this. Okay. Oh wow.
So it's basically, when you sit there, you just see how he's editing the film.
Yeah, that's quite. That's quite amazing. It's almost like he's doing almost like a live in-camera cut at times.
Very much so, yeah. And I called him on it actually, and quite because he comes from BBC from early when he was an art director on like some sitcoms for BBC. I don't know how many years ago it's that. I'm not saying.
I bet he never thought he'd be going back to that sort of style after starting commercials, which were probably more 1 camera at the beginning. Yeah. And more everything else, and now he's kind of going back to almost how, in some ways, like the stuff he came up with. That's interesting.
But at the same time, just to say, which is very important, that he still understands that when there's a time to use 1 camera, he will use 1 camera.
It's fascinating. I find that was also
what it matters when the scene. Sometimes we actually get caught by surprise because it's like a bit of an automatic pilot. Okay, let's put the camera here, set the scene, and he comes in. Let's just get 1 pulling shot. That's it. Well, okay, it's fine.
Yeah, it's like a shock, a surprise.
It's like we're fine with that. It's beautiful. And sometimes I do that too. I convince them to. I just really wait. Okay.
Okay.
It's just, it's a combination of two things. It's like, it's efficiency. It's how you make a story the quickest possible way. But at the same time, sometimes it's like, okay, you just have to do, like with Last Duel, we had a lot of like single shots with, with steady cam and stuff. And here too.
Yeah. It also allows a focus on the one thing. Just even for him, if it's important, everyone can look at the one thing. You can't always really look at 4 cameras, with equal attention.
He has to look at multiple cameras. His attention is insane.
Well, it sounds like it's really also, it creates a lovely momentum on set, because the one thing, it's interesting because for people that don't understand that much about filmmaking, the description of storyboards makes it seem like it's all laid out, but actually the filmmaking is a process, right? It's a bit like playing music. It's a bit like jazz in this context with the performers and you and everything else.
Absolutely. Jazz is a great example. I always do that. I always use this example, and if you have a great musicians, you can allow for the improv, because they will always come back to the main core of the theme or whatever.
Yeah, that's great. It's like that sounds exciting. Oh, we have a couple of questions from the Q&A. Let me see. Here's Absolutely. One. Okay, here we go from our audience member. You have experience working in both film and television formats. As a cinematographer, how does that switch affect your process, and what differences do you notice in terms of your relationship with the directors or the showrunner or the production in general? So the differences between television and film.
Well, I haven't, as a cinematographer, I haven't done much television. I did one movie for Netflix that was kind of theatrical with Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
I did one pilot for Ridley, which was Ridley, so that no difference. I have to admit that when I was starting out, I did a lot of movies of the week. I don't know if you guys remember what it was, Film Network.
Oh yeah.
Kind of high-end TV, but as a focus puller or a camera operator, or like a B camera operator, or somebody like that. Or somebody they send you to like shoot the funeral,
Yeah. So what
that's my experience with traditional television. But right now, I mean, I don't know exactly, but my feeling is that because of technology, the blend between movies and television is the line is so kind of invisible. And I would actually say that a lot of streaming television is photographically, I mean, story-wise too, but photographically way more interesting sometimes.
Yeah, it's definitely
that what we do on the big movies, It's way, and there's incredible pool of young cinematographers that can just, with the technology now, they just have great eye and talent and imagination.
Yeah.
They're killing it. They're killing it.
And the television producers and networks seem to embrace, giving us the chance to experiment more and to be more cinematic. Speaking of other artists, there's a question now about, can you talk a little about your collaboration with the costume designer, which is Janty Yates, and the production designer Arthur Max on House of Gucci, which I think you both worked with before, right?
Well, I did talk about it. This is the first thing I mentioned. I mean, these are like pillars of Ridley stable, Yeah, I mean, they're there, and they have they've done more work with him than I did, because they go back to Gladiator.
Yes.
So they're both incredible. They're just incredibly knowledgeable, hardworking. And I mentioned in the beginning of my speech that, when I come in on the set, the movie is prepped so thoroughly already that it's incredible, because I draw inspiration from whatever Arthur does and whatever Janty does.
Yeah. No, they're
spend a lot of time in our department, in costume department. That's when you start seeing textures and stuff, apart of locations that when you're going to do lighting wise, you see everything you're going to be photographing, which is pretty incredible.
And they both they just understand lighting so well too, because I guess with Arthur, so you've done a lot of films with him where you've had to build a lot of lighting into the sets, which is a very different thing than on the on Gucci.
We kind of do 3 different kind of movies. If we do space helmets, space movies, then we do period movies, and then we do contemporary movies. So, but everyone has separate challenges. I mean, with the spaceships and a lot of it, it's building it, lights and the design of the film. And I mean, even in a movie like this, practicals. I mean, the practicals conversations always instrumental. And when you do a period movie, it's also practicals. It's fireplaces. It's candelabros. So
yeah, it's always finding the source.
This stuff is really part of my dialogue with Arthur, and it's, you know, the window treatment, super important lines, and we're gonna do shears, and always important, because how you control the light, how you can deal with it.
Yeah, and how you can be flexible.
So you have all those tools that you can use, because I mean, the blind is as important as the light behind it. You know?
It sure is. Another question from our audience is, who are some of the cinematographers who have influenced your work? Who do you admire, I guess, and who has influenced you when you were younger?
Oh, a lot of them. I mean, like, well, you know, of course, cliche. Also, Greg Toland and
yeah.
James Ho, old, like 50s American. Of course, Conrad Hall, good old Gordon Willis. I mean, that's American, incredible cinematography. I mean, Vilmos, of course. And then you go to the newer generation. Now I'm going to go back now to Europeans. If you guys know the names like Gianni Di Venanza, who shot all the stuff with Fellini, Giuseppe Rotuno, Carlo Di Palma. These are like all great Italian guys from 60s, 70s of Italian cinema. Then you have Sven Nykvist, amazing cameraman from Sweden, who had a huge influence. Then you have fantastic English guys like, you know, Jeffrey Unsworth and John Alcott.
John Alcott, yeah.
I mean, can go on forever. Then Vittorio Storaro, you know, all these guys you grow up on, they're like gods. I mean, even like Ben Harrison and Peter Bijou. I mean, when I was a kid, and I remember living in New York City, and Mike Sarson was lighting Angel Heart. And they were just
it's an amazing. It's an amazing film, that for photography, isn't it? Incredible.
And I was living in Tribeca, and in my alleyway, you know, I look out at this huge Wendy light, you know, the famous Watkins, another great. So I was like looking at this big light, wet street, and it's like, oh my God, this is just so cool. So, you know, there's plenty of them. You know, I mean, right now from the young Roger Deakins is brilliant. And another very, very exceptional cinematographer who was kind of my friend and my generation was Harris Savides.
Yeah, oh yes.
Harris was exceptional because Harris comes from still photography world, and he just never, he did some work with David Fincher, he did one movie with Ridley actually, and then he did a lot of movies with what's his name, made those old art movies with him. Anyway, Harris was the guy who was like the first one, because everything was backlit, and he was saying, oh,
yeah,
everybody just no backlight. And he was the first one who started doing like soft front light. It's beautiful work. He was the first one to start pulling the film to make it softer.
Yeah,
it's really, really remarkable. You know, it's like very not flashy, but really kind of changed the way of thinking. It was very pioneering. You know?
Yeah, and also he did an amazing thing, because you would assume to create, you know, kind of contrast and mood, these things would not lead to that, but he could use like some very soft top light and lower contrast, but still have like an amazingly moody image. Like it was very, you know what I mean? Like it was a new way to sort of create a similar feeling, which was really groundbreaking at the time.
Exceptional man, really exceptional. I remember because I was like doing commercials. I was doing my first movie, and he was just becoming hot in commercials. And I remember having dinner with him, and someone introduced us in New York. I said, listen, I'm in New York, but if you're in LA, why don't you start using my guys so we like exchange crew? Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
great.
just amazing.
And when you come to New York, you always ask them what restaurant to go to. You definitely knew what the good food is.
I have a theory that appreciation of food and appreciating of lighting and cinematography are tied together. I rarely meet a cinematographer who doesn't really can always tell me where the good restaurant is.
Well, Harris was the one. Anybody better than Harris?
Oh, it was a great loss when we lost him. I think we're almost out of time. I wanted to ask you.
Right.
I know just ask you one thing. A lot of or sometimes the audience for these things is quite young. There's a lot of young cinematographers or aspiring cinematographers. What advice would you have to them that are getting into it, that are inspired by your work, or any advice at all to give them?
Well, just keep doing it, keep doing it, and look at the old stuff, look at old movies, like just go past Marvel, there's something about the photography right now is so kind of, there's just, the world is so oversaturated with imagery, so it's kind of hard. I would say it must be hard if you're young, because it's just so many images. Back in the day, you saw 3 movies and had 1 book of great photography and you were set, and now it's just so overwhelming. So it's tricky. I mean, of course, keep doing it. If you love it, keep doing it. But I mean, I would just go back to like old movies, start watching old movies, just slow films and just classics, really great films, and see how they've done it with such a cumbersome technology, and everything was so hard and difficult, and and they managed to pull it off. And the discipline was much harder. Just to have a bit of I kind of respect young guys who try to do film, even though because it's just see where it comes from.
Yeah, learn at the different thought process. A film which I think came up in your interview with Roger on his podcast was In Cold Blood, which is an amazing film that Conrad Hall shot, which is like it's just kind of insane, right? And yet it's so old, and yet it's both natural but also very stylized, right? It's a very interesting combination.
No, it's just those movies were so contemporary. You look at those movies and it just puts us to shame when we're doing it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, thank you. It's very, very kind of you to offer us your time. I know you're working in London. It's late at night. You're working. So thank you so much for sharing your time with the audience today.
Thank you so much. I hope you guys, appreciate it. Okay. Thank you so much.
It was a real pleasure. And thank you very much for Panavision for supporting the program and bringing this today. And thanks very much.
Okay, man. Thank you so much. Good luck with your work and stuff. Okay.
Cheers. Thank you, Greg. Thanks. Bye, Darius.
Ciao, ciao.